Good afternoon, everyone. House Taxation Committee will come to order. First item would be requests for bill introductions. Do we have any requests for bill introductions today? See none. The less we get introduced, we might actually get a catch up and get through some of these bills here. So, if there are no requests for bill introductions, we will move on to our first business item of the day, and that is a hearing on House Bill 2176. For an overview on 2176, I would recognize the revisor's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2176 is functionally operates the same way as what will be House Bill 2205. I'll go through 2176, but just know I may be the repetitive or shorten my next one, but it pretty much operate the same way. 2176 would create a new Arkansas City Area Public Library District Act. Under the bill, go through each section independently. Section 1 would define terms. Essentially, the territory that would apply would be the Unified School District 470. That would be the new boundaries set for the area of this new Arkansas City Area Public Library District. Section 2 would allow the current board of the trustee to adopt a resolution. This would be the current board of trustees of the Arkansas City Public Library that currently exists to adopt a resolution proposing to create a new library district, stating the proposed tax levy amount for the library district. And if such resolution would be adopted, an election would be held to vote on whether or not to establish a library district by the electors. Existing contracts and obligations of the Arkansas City Public Library would become obligations of the Arkansas City Area Library District. If the election approves the Arkansas City Area Library District, such entity would be governed by a board of 7-member trustees. 4 members will be appointed by the governing body of the city of Arkansas City, with 1 member residing outside the city. 3 members will be appointed to the board by the Board of Education of Unified School District number 470, and who would reside outside the city. Members will be appointed for a term of 4 years and can only serve 2 consecutive terms without a break in service. Members would receive no compensation, but would be paid actual and necessary expenses in attending meetings and carrying out the duties as members of the board. Section 4 would just establish the structure of the board. Section 5 would require the free use of the library by residents of the library district. The board may extend the use and privilege of the library to non-residents or charge a reasonable fee. Section 6 would allow the board the legal right to contract, sue and be sued, acquire, hold, and convey real and personal property. The board may also establish rules for the library, acquire materials for the library, employ employees, contract with other libraries, municipalities, and school boards for the furnishing of library services. They can receive monies and gifts, make annual reports to the state librarian, and place money received in separate funds if necessary. Section 7 would require the library district to prepare an annual budget to be certified by the Unified School District number 470 Board of Education, subject to a public hearing. Any budget resolution shall state the total tax to be levied for the library district by the Board of Education. Any tax levied would not be considered to be a tax levy of the Unified School District. And the resolution would be required to be published in the official newspaper. Any increase in the tax levy would be subject to a protest petition and an election if it was successful. And then Section 9 would include the Arkansas City Area Public Library District Act as part of the State Grants and Aid to Libraries Act that currently exists. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, committee questions. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sievers, do you know of any fiscal impact this might have on rural taxpayers?
I'd
probably
probably address the fiscal note with Department of Revenue.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess I want to go up to the top. I know you covered a lot of the sections there, and I just want to make sure the election is to create the new district. The election is not for setting the levy. Is that correct?
Probably look to Mike, as Mike is the drafter. That's how I would read it. But
Yes, Mr. Hine.
The election is to create the district, and in that question, they would set the levy.
Okay, so there
So
would be a
it
fixed
would
levy.
be part of the question that's in the bill.
Okay, thank you. And I was trying to see, there was another question I had. So the Board of Trustees, it sounds like the school district would kind of be in charge of running or operating the library with employees and such. Then the Board of Trustees I'm trying to figure out where the bifurcation is here on what the trustees do versus what the school district is responsible for.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, it's a totally new, separate district government, and that special district would be responsible for its own employees and so on. They may enter into an agreement with the school district to provide some help, but it is independent from the school district totally. So other than the school district levies on their behalf.
So then the school district would probably receive that distribution. I'm thinking of the property tax distribution from the treasurer's office, and then they would send that to the library district.
I think that actually the library district would get it directly from the county.
Okay. Committee, are there further questions for the revisers? Representative Alcala.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may know the answer to this question. I got a little brain fog going on, but went to the dentist. Can't this be done by the local municipality, local government? It cannot be, or can be?
When you say it, are you referring to the library?
Right.
Or not to have a tax district? I think they need the legislation to create the tax district.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody can have a library if they so choose.
Okay, for the you're right. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Representative Corbett.
I'm kind of following the same line. Like in one of the towns in my district, Carbondale, they got a $600,000 grant. You know, they built a new library, but they didn't have a taxing. They may, like the library in Topeka, can raise their taxes for us by themselves, but I'm kind of wondering why they just can't do this by themselves without starting a whole new bank of government. I don't understand that really.
Okay. Yes. Fine.
Cities can establish their own libraries. Most of them do in some fashion. What you got in front of you is a proposal to create a library district and expand the tax district beyond the boundaries of the city. The city boundaries aren't as large as the school district, and that's the intent is to, and they, I'm sure, serve a larger area. So that's the justification.
If I may, it looks like as far as from the taxpayer standpoint, these taxpayers are already in a library district, kind of a regional library district, and that would kind of carve out that district that the school boundaries would create. So they're basically creating their own district for their library rather than being a part of the overall tax district, the regional library district. So, are there any further questions? Representative Sawyer.
I don't really have a question, but right now, the city of Utah has a library, and the Arkansas City has a library. But right now, they tax within the city. They want to expand and be able to use the same geographic area to tax. They want to increase the tax base area to the size of the school district. I mean, that's what this bill's about, and that's why it takes a separate bill. They have libraries right now. They do exist. They're just trying to expand the tax base. Yeah, I think in one case, it sounds like they want to actually increase revenue so they can do more. I think in the other case, it may just want to reduce the amount that the city pays and have other people pay it. If I understand why I read the bills in the background.
Yes, Mr. Hine.
This is not an unusual situation. The city of Topeka had an election 15, 20 years ago to expand the boundaries of the Topeka Public Library to include most of Shawnee County. Independence, City of Independence, which this bill was patterned after, a few years ago, had a similar legislation passed where their boundaries were coterminous with a school district that was part of it. So, anyway, for what it's worth, that's.
Okay. Did somebody accuse us of being a simple bill? I don't think we've ever had this many questions for the revisers, but yes, Representative Corbett.
Brought up what actually happened here in Shawnee County. Every time they need more money, they expand it through the county. And if you live in the county, there's not enough belly buttons out there to save themselves. So you always get to pay for all the white elephants the city can't afford. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you for that to both our revisers. Kathleen, would you want to give us a quick overview from the department's perspective on the fiscal note? Most of this is local. It doesn't impact the state a lot, but there is a little portion, so welcome.
Yes. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue is indicating that House Bill 2176 would have a minimal fiscal impact on our operations. And right now, it's an undeterminable fiscal impact at this point because we don't have enough information to be able to determine the fiscal impact. As well, there are several other entities that have provided information to the Division of Budget, and you can see that on the fiscal note that has been prepared by the Division of Budget.
Thank you. And just for the sake of duplication, that's pretty much the same on the second bill as well, correct?
You are correct.
Okay. Committee, any questions? Representative Sanders.
So would my question now be appropriate? I mean, do you know if this would have an impact on the rural taxpayers?
It probably should. At this point, we just don't know what that amount is.
Okay. So would they be, for lack of a better term, double taxed?
I don't think they would be double taxed. It would depend on, as far as the impact on the rural or the local taxpayers, it would depend on what that mill levy is going to be set at, whether or not it's going to be an increase, decrease, or the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions for Department of Revenue? Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, I thought I read in testimony, so basically they would be dropping out of a library district. I can't remember the name of it. It's like a regional library district and be put inside of this new expanded one. Tom's shaking his head, so I got a feeling he's got a thought. But to the point of being double taxed, I guess I thought they were coming out of one and being put into this new expanded library district. Thank you.
Okay. That's probably not a question for revenue. We'll make sure we vet that before we move anywhere on this bill, but perhaps some of the conferees could answer that question better too. See no further questions, and she's already sat down, so we'll open up proponent section testimony for House Bill 2176 and welcome first via WebEx, Mindy Fonenstill with the Arkansas City Public Library.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Who knew that the library world was so complicated? Well, this bill came about because Ark City Public Library is currently capped at 6 mills by charter ordinance through the city of Ark City. And this limit has been in place for several decades. For a number of years, there's been a lack of considerable growth in the ad valorem tax base. And so with costs for goods and services increasing, it's prompted fear that we might have to consider cuts to staffing, services, hours of operation, if additional funding isn't obtained. And this would really be unfortunate because our recent work with USD 470 in early literacy efforts, coupled with county statistics on poverty, makes our efforts to increase funding for services and programs even more essential. It's important to note that our current tax receipts are 40% less compared to other libraries in the state that serve a similar population size. So we're already operating with less compared to others. Our ultimate goal is to hire additional staff so that we can expand our outreach and bookmobile services, and to continue our partnerships to increase efforts in addressing symptoms of poverty and lack of access to resources in our community. And some of the statistics that are driving that strategic goal is that 70% of USD 470 students are on free and reduced lunches. 65% of kindergartners are at some risk to high risk of not reaching performance targets. And 22% of students in the district are English language learners. So this data shows that there's a strong need for interventions for students before they even enter the school system. And this data isn't exclusive to city limits. There are tracts inside and outside of city limits that are more disadvantaged than 50 to 99% of all census tracts in the U.S. So the library board and I feel that the library is positioned to help with the work of improving literacy rates. We also believe that creating the library district would create more equitable funding. And our plan, the board's plan, is to pass a resolution for a tax levy of 5 mills. So this would lower taxes for most property owners in the USD 470 area for library services. We would greatly appreciate your favorable recommendation, and I'm happy to answer questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, committee. We'll go ahead and take questions for each conferee as they finish. And first question is Representative Sawyer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Okay, I have a couple questions. I understand right now you levy 6 mills to the residents of the city of Arc City. Now you want to levy 5 mills to the size of the school district. So people in the city pay a little less than people outside the city would help pay for the library. That's the goal, right? As I understand it. I have a question. In the bill, there is a prohibition of using any money to pay for the South Central Regional Library System. Do you know why that is in the bill?
I'm not sure if I can answer that. I know there's precedence for it being in similar legislation with other libraries. I would imagine it's to avoid maybe a double taxation so that people outside of city limits aren't being taxed for the regional system and being taxed for this new library district.
So would your library continue to use the services of the South Central Kansas Regional System?
Yes, we would. I think there's a period where we might lose services for a while and then we have to repetition for membership. But I do believe that membership is still on the table if we were to become a new library district.
All right, thank you.
Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the questions I have for you, how many employees do you have on staff now?
We have 10 employees. We have 4 that are full-time.
And one question I might pose to you, instead of taxing the county, would you consider maybe offering them a membership, like a library membership card at maybe a higher rate to use your facility than just those who really wanted to use it would be paying for it?
Well, I believe that our agreement with Sickles membership does not allow us to charge users for use of library services. So if we were to do something like that, we would no longer be allowed to be a member of the regional system.
But you'll be taxing them, which is kind of like a library card, maybe. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Committee, any further questions for this conferee? Representative Sanders.
Would it be unfair to characterize this as a creative way to try to bring more tax dollars to your disposal?
Well, I think that is what it does. It does increase our funding to provide those services and programs that we need to.
And is that the purpose of it?
Yes, so that we can hire more staff and do that, yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, any further questions?
I don't know if you have this information, but what is the population of Arc City, and then what is the population of this new district that you're creating?
So the population of Arc City is about 12,000. And I think the population within USD 470 boundaries is a little over 15,000.
So you're increasing the population that you're being able to tax by about, is that right, 25%?
Right.
Seeing no further questions, thank you for your testimony. And we will move on to our next conferee, and this is Lindsay Wilk with USD 470, also over WebEx.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Arc City Public Library as a proponent for this bill today. I am the Early Literacy Coordinator for Arc City Public Schools, USD 470, so I'm here with that school district hat on. Our work with the Early Literacy Initiative was launched in 2020 from a Kansas Health Foundation grant, so I'm sure you're familiar with their work, to address the policies, systems, and environments that impact childhood literacy levels. And through our really diverse team of stakeholders that's included public health and private healthcare and the child care system and our local government, we've determined this to be one of our major gaps in our local area. And so we are, as Mindy noted, we're significantly underfunded compared to libraries of similar size, including in our own county. And we're looking to match the area that we serve already with the funding to support that in a more agile way. We are really hoping to sort of bolster the partners in our community that are reaching children and families before they enter the school system. We know that roughly 80% of a child's brain forms before they're at the age of 3. We know that kids entering kindergarten ready are more likely to graduate and have predictors of success down the road. And we know that if a child's not reading on grade level by 3rd grade, there's a whole host of struggles that typically follow. And so we know those early years are crucial, but we can't expect the school district to be out meeting families even before kids are before their doors. We're trying our best, but as you guys know, that's a strained system already. And so partners like our library are just crucial to that work. And I'm just here to sort of testify that I've seen Mindy and her staff do a lot with a little. They've been very creative, taking the library outside their walls, story times in public parks, a bookmobile that's following the free and reduced lunch bus, a literacy curriculum at our low-income summer camp. So lots of opportunities, and I just think they have phenomenal plans to reach families even more and help us address some of those stats that she lifted up. And I really think this bill is a win for many. It allows the library to reach more underserved families. For many people in our city, taxes going towards the library will actually go down. It's a strengthened collaboration between two giant entities that care about education. And then it's an intentional effort by lawmakers to prioritize equitable access to educational resources. So on behalf of the school district and the Early Literacy Initiative, I also humbly ask for your support of this House bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony today. Maybe following up a little bit on some of the questions, do you think that rural children will be able to take advantage of this expanded library service? I know if you live in town, maybe you can bike there, or it's much easier to get there. I guess my only concern is you're doing this by popular vote, where obviously I think if you live in Arc City, it's appealing because you're going to pay less taxes, but get more services. Or if you live outside the city, maybe you're really not going to have as many people take advantage, but you still have to pay more taxes on that. So thank you.
Sure. That's a great question. The whole goal of having more revenue is to work on getting out to the neighborhoods. And so particularly using the library's new bookmobile, which we coordinated a lot of collaborative grant funding to get that, to take that out to specific neighborhoods and community events in those neighborhoods outside of just the city's boundaries. And so that's one way we're really hoping to do that more.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Committee, any further questions for this? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Lindsay. Committee, that is all the conferees that I have appearing for proponents. Is there anyone else wishing to appear as a proponent on House Bill 2176? Seeing none, we have no opponents. We do have some neutral written only testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to appear before the committee as either an opponent or neutral? Seeing none, we will close the hearing now on 2176 and then move on to House Bill 2205. Very similar bill. I'll turn to the revisor's office for a quick summary on the differences on these two bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Structurally, the structure of the bills are pretty much identical. For this bill, 2205, instead of Arkansas City, it'd be Udall Area Public Library District. So the city of Udall, current library for the city, would be absorbed into the Udall Area Public Library District, subject to a vote and a new board of trustees being formed. But the structure of how it would be formed would model exactly as the prior bill.
Any questions, committee? Seeing none. Did you have one? Oh, sorry. Seeing none, I think we'll go ahead and skip Department of Revenue unless we had any other questions. It'll be the same thing as same fiscal note essentially as the first one. So we will move on to our proponent testimony on House Bill 2205 and welcome Monica Rupp. Welcome to committee. You might need to turn on your microphone. There's a little button down there.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, hi, my name is Monica Rupp, and I'm the Udall Public Library Board President. I am in favor today of our bill. For most of the past 25 years that I've lived in Udall, we've had a dark, outdated library. When my son was young, we'd go to the library to check out books, movies, and get homeschooling materials. It wasn't an appealing place, but it was the closest place we had to go get those items. Now that I know that their budget was never more than $10,000 until 2021, I can see why it was what it was. In 2017, the city started planning to build a new new building that would house a small doctor's office, small fitness center, and the library. In doing this, our city made a huge investment in its future. The library staff and board started working nonstop to make huge changes to our old library's operation. We actually did not have spine labels. We did not have automatic barcoding. We had none of that. So we were starting at what you guys are probably used to as a library in the 1950s. On February 1st last year, we actually opened our new doors. The difference between the old library and the new library was best described by a young girl to her mom when she walked in at the beginning by saying it's not a dungeon anymore. The city has helped us through increased funding to reach a budget of approximately $30,000 and has continued to pay our utility, telephone, and internet bills. To make it more fair to our town, which has been bearing the full financial cost of our library, passing of this bill would help create a chance to spread the cost more fairly between the people who are using our library. It would also create a bigger tax base, providing more money for our library at a lower cost to our taxpayers. A 1 mil tax levy by our library for the entire school district would provide about $37,000, barring any unforeseen circumstances. And currently we are at $30,000 at 6.7 mils. If the bill passes the House and the Senate, as well as a vote by the local taxpayers, it is our intention to start at 1 mil, pending a stable property values, which would be a drop in taxes for all of the taxpayers. So it'd be about 5.7 mil drop for the city, and it would be about 0.229 drop for the rural people. Today, I ask you, when you consider our bill, to consider not placing a ceiling on it for 3 reasons. First, Kansas statute 79-5040 states that in 1999 and in each year thereafter, all existing statutory fund mill levy rate and aggregate levy rate limitations on taxing subdivisions are hereby suspended. It would be unfair to place a mill levy rate on our library or limitation on our library when it clearly says that they've been suspended and when many of the libraries do not have one because of this state statute. Setting a limit to a set number is also unequal between libraries because the amount 1 mil generates varies greatly based on each library's taxed area and can change drastically over time. Second, if our bill becomes state law, that means the ceiling would be in effect in perpetuity. At some point in the future, a decrease in property values or an increase in inflation or both could very likely cause the ceiling to make it impossible for us to function. Finally, if our bill passes as is, it does state that the Board of Trustees may adopt a resolution proposing to create a library district and stating that the proposed amount for the library, but it's followed by if a majority of the qualified electors of the proposed library district vote in favor of, then a library district shall be established and maintained. So this clearly gives our taxpayers the right to vote down any unreasonable proposition that we send them, especially one that has an unreasonable tax levy. It further states under 7C that such tax levy amount may be levied in each successive year unless a petition requesting an election upon the proposition to increase the tax levy in excess of the current one is signed by 5% of the qualified voters of the taxing district and is filed with the county election officer within 30 days following the date of the last publication of the resolution. This gives our taxpayers the power to say enough is enough if they choose to do so. Our town really needs a quality library, a place where people can go to socialize, learn, use computers, use printing and fax services, and check out materials that they want and that's close to them. We have so few places like this in our town for people to go that we must do whatever we can to support them. I am one of the taxpayers that lives outside of town, but within the school district. I want a chance to see that I might be able to use my tax money to support my own local library, because I believe that our library is a very valuable, needed place in our community. I ask you to allow the taxpayers to decide what is important to them and to make the decision about how much they are willing to give. Currently, so you know, currently the number of people that we have outside of so we're talking about changing from our city's basic city limits as our taxing district to the school district. Right now, our current card holders in town is 44.3%. There are 155 of them. Outside of the city, but within the school district, we have 169 of them, which is 48%. So we actually have a higher percentage within the school district, but outside of town than we do in town. And I'm one of those people who currently pay nothing for our library, but use it all the time. We do have 7.6% of our card holders that are outside of the school district completely, which that's 26 of 350. So for us, this bill would mean actually making it much more fair and yet dropping the taxpayers literally for everyone and giving us a much longer time to be able to, I mean, $30,000 it's really not much of a budget to run a library, but we have kids in our library all the time. And I'm sure if I wrote in in my letter of testimony, our actual visits to our library have actually quadrupled since we opened our doors. And we're still we're open 30 hours a week. We have one person that works 20. She's our library director. And we have a 10-hour person that works just as an assistant. So, but I mean, we went from 500 visits to 2,000 almost in 1 year. So I appreciate you guys letting me come before you today. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Thank you for your testimony. Committee, are there any questions? Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if this goes through, are you going to still be a part of the regional library system?
Yes, we do not plan on getting out of it. There are still, even if both of our libraries do take our school districts, there will still be areas outside of school districts. So there are really only 3 public libraries, I believe, in Cali County right now, which is Ark City, Winfield, and Udall. And ours is very, 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 very small compared to theirs. Our town is 650 to 700 people normally. When you're talking Winfield and Ark City, I'm going to guess at least 12 to 17,000 people. So there are areas outside of our school districts that would still be collected by Sickles to fund, the area regional library system. So yes, I had talked to Ray Walling, and I kind of asked that question if we would be out, but under the current wording of the bill, it says we would continue our obligations that we currently have, which includes membership in Sickles.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Kind of remind me of a question I forgot to ask the last conferee, but is this a special election, or will this go on a normal election? Do you know what the plan is? I
did ask our county clerk, and she recommended going with a regular election because, well, with $30,000, we can't afford the extra cost of a special election. So she recommended that we would put it under a regular election unless something crazy happened and we couldn't do that. So.
Okay. Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, I wanted to make a final comment. I think you did a good job of explaining this point is while we kind of get wrapped in the weeds sometimes down here in the Capitol, we are not creating this district. We are not setting this levy. We are empowering the local voters that will be paying this tax. All this bill is doing is saying, yes, you can have the election to decide locally whether or not you want to create this and whether it's good for the community, whether or not that the mill levy is right. All those decisions are best made at the local level. So, seeing no further questions, thank you again for your testimony. Committee, that is the only oral conferees that I had on this. Is there anyone else wishing to appear as a proponent or opponent or neutral? If not, I'll draw the committee's attention to several other written proponents and one neutral, and we will close the hearing on House Bill 2205 and turn immediately to hearing on House Bill 2111 and turn to the revisor's office for an overview, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2111 would make changes to the calculations used in star bond districts, adjust the date for the discontinuance of the food sales income tax credit. It would adjust the date for the implementation of the 0% rate for sales and use tax on food and food ingredients, and would provide a sales tax exemption for children's diapers and feminine hygiene products. Going through each section a little more in detail, Section 1 would establish the star bonds food sales tax revenue replacement fund to be administered by the state treasurer. The state treasurer would transfer from the state general fund to the star bonds food sales tax revenue replacement fund amounts that were certified by the Secretary of Revenue equal to the amount of revenue that would have been generated from the sales of food and food ingredients at the 6.5% rate within a star bonds project district. The state treasurer would then pay from the star bonds food sales tax revenue replacement fund to the city bond finance fund the corresponding amount for each applicable jurisdiction. Section 2 would amend the definition of tax increment under the star bonds law. The change would allow star bonds project districts established prior to July 1, 2022. For reference, that was the date that the first sales tax revenue, I believe, dropped, or I guess that was when the law went into effect. The first drop came in January, but that was when the law went into effect last year. To add to the tax increment an amount equal to the amount of sales and use tax revenue that would have been derived from the sale of food and food ingredients within the district if the rate would have been 6.5%. Section 3 would discontinue the food sales income tax credit starting in tax year 2024. Sections 4 and then 7 through 9 would amend the distribution percentage credited to the state highway fund from revenue generated from sales and use tax by adjusting the distribution. Currently it's at 17%. It was slated to go to 18% on, I believe, July 1 of 2025 or January 1, 2025. However, that 18% would come into effect April 1 of 2023. Section 5 would provide that the rate of tax, sales and use tax on food and food ingredients would be 0% starting on April 1 of 2023. And then lastly, Section 6 would provide a sales tax exemption for sales of children's diapers and feminine hygiene products. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Adam. And this, if you want to defer to Department of Revenue on this, that's fine. How do we determine what the star bonds estimate is, or how do we keep track of how much money that would entail? Are the retailers going to have to turn in receipts, or how? I guess I'm struggling trying to figure out how that process would work.
You know, I'd probably have to defer to Revenue to answer that question, to be honest with you. I don't know if they would figure out the amount of tax at the lower rate and calculate backwards from that of what it would have been had it been taxed at the, whatever the current, the 0%, and then go backward. Currently it's at 4%, but they'd go backwards and find that increment and missing tax revenue. But I'll probably defer to them to truly answer their calculation.
would you feel comfortable for some of our newer members? We might have some that are on commerce, but would you just briefly explain what a star bond is?
Sure. Maybe a little bit out of my jurisdiction here, but star bond districts are taxing or districts that get set up. There's kind of a joint function between the state and local entities. The most notable one that everyone's probably familiar with is the Legends District over in Kansas City, Kansas. That's actually, I think, maybe 3 districts now. There's ultimately more districts. However, what it is the locals get, or to set up this district, you get to keep the increment in revenue generated from sales tax, the state portion, and that goes towards, I believe, land development. There's certain restrictions on what the money can be used towards. The Kansas City one is kind of novel in the fact that it essentially went from very little amount to a large amount. So there was a large amount of money that went towards it with zero. That was the increment. Most of them are smaller in that you take the increment on what currently exists on sales tax revenue, and they get to keep the increment above that. There's lots more star bond districts than just that one. They're all across the state, but that's kind of my understanding of how it works.
Thank you for that. And I didn't expect you to be the expert, just a brief summary on that. So that's perfect. Committee, any questions for the revisers? Seeing none, thank you for that. Next, I turn to Kathleen with Department of Revenue to take a look at the fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. We are estimating that House Bill 2111 would decrease state revenues by $40,656,000 in fiscal year 2023 and by $301,830,000 in fiscal year 2024. I believe on the fiscal note that is provided by the Division of Budget, it kind of lines out the different items in this bill. So it references the food sales tax going to 0 for 1 of 23. It has the sales tax exemption for the diapers and the feminine hygiene products. It also mentions the food sales tax credit, which will go away, and then the star bond replacement funds as well. So that information is provided on the fiscal note. To estimate our impact for this specific bill, for food specifically, we have assumed that 15% of all current sales tax collections are collected on food and food ingredients. So we looked at the prior tax collections for this and multiplied it by the 15% to come up with our estimate for the food and food ingredients. For the diapers and the feminine hygiene products, we looked at consumer expenditure data, and we also looked to the Department of Health and Environment to figure out the impact. As far as the impact for the food sales tax credit, we looked at what we had given prior to this tax year. So we looked at tax year 2020 information to determine the impact was around $10.3 million. There's something else I was going to mention. I apologize, it just slipped from my mind. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Okay, not a problem. I guess I have a quick question. Based on, last year I asked you about implementation time. We're going from a single rate now to 2 different rates. I understand that would probably take a lot more programming and for not only Department of Revenue, but also the retailers. Just now that we're taking that second rate and changing the rate, that programming is already there. Do we have a timeline on, I guess the long way around is the April 1st. Is that a reasonable timeline if we get this bill passed relatively soon, or what do we need to expect as far as making sure we don't put a crunch on retailers and the Department of Revenue?
The April 1 date is still doable. The streamlined agreement does provide that it would be best to give retailers at least 30 days prior to the enactment of that new tax rate. in order for them to program their systems. If we do not give them at least 30 days, then we cannot hold any of our sellers, any of our gosh darn it, I apologize, any of our sellers responsible for any liability. So we are still doable. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if we go if we go to 3/31 and you have everything is good and it is enacted that day, we would not be able to hold any of our sellers liable until after April 30th, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay. And to my question that I had for the revisers, how do you estimate, how accurate are the numbers and estimations on what it would take to kind of hold the star bonds harmless with that provision?
We look at prior tax collections in those districts, and I don't know that there's really a good answer for you, but we do look at the prior tax collections and then estimate from there as to what we need for the hold harmless.
Well, I know because this issue came up last year when we were looking at the food sales tax, and there was a proposal to do it on also prepared foods, not just the food and food ingredients, but also including the prepared foods. And it seems like a lot of your star bonds districts have restaurants, and that would have been a major impact. But I'm curious how much that star bond piece would really come into play, but I don't know that there's a good way to, without analyzing exactly what stores are in every single star bond district and knowing what their sales are.
Agreed, Mr. Chairman. And we would be more than happy if, I need to look at the data, but if we have split that out by district, I don't think that we have, but we can take a look.
Committee, are there any questions for Kathleen? Yes, Representative Sawyer.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on the chairman's questions. When I'm reading your fiscal note, it sounds like you're saying there's $15.4 million worth of food sales in the star bond district. Am I reading that right? That sounds like a lot. It says right here. It says I'm looking at page 3, that last paragraph, first sentence.
That is correct. $15.4 million for fiscal year 2024. So let me go back, Representative Sawyer, and see if we can get a little bit more information on that for you.
That seems like a lot more grocery sales than I would expect to be in star bond districts.
Yeah, if you have that information, if you can locate that, we can get that out to the committee if you want to send that to Leah, if it's available. Okay. Committee, any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Kathleen. Mm-hmm. All right, we will now open up our proponent section testimony for House Bill 2111 and welcome first to committee Representative Vic Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe you received my written testimony. Do not be confused. February 7, 2023, testimony from a year ago, February 7, 2022, essentially on the same subject. I want to thank you for having a hearing on this bill. I appear today in support of HB 2111. Let us not concern ourselves with who gets credit for eliminating the sales tax on the items mentioned in the bill. Let us go about the state declaring that we all did something good that will benefit every Kansan. And as so many struggle today to make ends meet, that we did it together in a truly bipartisan way. I come here today to show my support for this bill, but also to ask that you make a small amendment, adding additional hygiene items to the proposed exemptions. Those items are listed in HB 2162, a 38-page bill that you can flip through and simply read the last paragraph which is repeated here. These are the items. Based on various fiscal notes, I took HB 2009, sponsored by Representative Sawyer Clayton. That has a fiscal note for some of these items. And I compared it to the fiscal note on all of these items from the bill from last year, the difference being about 14 million. Her proposed exemption is included in today's bill. That's how I got the difference, because that fiscal note is part of the fiscal note you have on 2111. This would add about 14 million annually. I've attached my testimony from a year ago. I'd encourage you to read it if you have the time, along with the number of other proponents that appeared in support of that bill. And to refresh your memory, as I know you have forgotten, Mr. Chairman, there were no opponents to that bill. And I once again appreciate your holding a hearing on the bill. By appearing today, I'm hoping to save you the trouble of having a hearing on the bill that I introduced this year, along with 40 of my colleagues. The premise is simple. Tax relief should be extended to those for whom it would benefit the most and for items that contribute to our improved hygiene, regardless of whether they are used by men, women, or children. I'd stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, committee. We have several conferees on this item. I think I'll take questions at the end of testimony. So we will welcome next Allison Marker. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. My name is Allison Marker, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement at YWCA Northeast Kansas. On behalf of our organization, I want to thank Chairman Smith and members of the committee for hearing testimony on this bill, which would provide crucial relief to the over 13,000 women and families we serve in Brown, Jackson, Shawnee, and Wabunsee counties. For those of you who may not be familiar with YWCA, we are the only YWCA in the state of Kansas, and we provide transformative and empowering services for families in need of affordable childcare, as well as survivors of domestic and sexual violence, stalking, and human trafficking. For these women and families, every penny matters. They're facing extraordinary challenges, and you're in a position to help. In Kansas, the cost of childcare is more than the cost of in-state college tuition, often more than the cost of rent. And I have countless stories to tell you of parents in our early learning center who come to us in need of affordable childcare. We're one of the few childcare centers in the city of Topeka that are willing to work with state subsidies. And so we are constantly at capacity. And we know far too well that our families continue to struggle to make ends meet while having state subsidies and having one of the most affordable childcare licensed centers in Topeka. A recent study found that almost half of Kansas households are making the difficult choice between food and utilities or medical care. Families are watching every penny, and they need relief now in the form on cutting the state sales tax for these basic necessities: groceries, diapers, and period products. The average cost of period products is $20 per cycle, so an estimated extra $200 to $300 a year for a woman, according to the National Organization of Women, and that is as of January of 2021. Furthermore, organizations like YWCA that serve women and girls are historically and radically underfunded. We receive less than 2% of national charitable giving as of 2019. House Bill 2111 is one way to move the needle on the work that we do of empowering women by easing the burden on our organization's supporters and donors who help us stock our pantry with canned goods and period products. Some of you who are local here, Representative Alcala, Representative Corbett, and I think I saw a couple of others, you may be familiar with our Day Center program, where we provide drop-in services primarily to victims of human trafficking. In 2022, we served 350 clients in our Day Center. So these are folks who are coming to us on the street. They may not be wearing shoes. They may not have proper identification. But one thing that we do know is that they deserve dignity. And so we provide them with case management. We allow them to use our computer lab, do a load of laundry, and cultivate community with victims and survivors in a space just for them. One of the things that is a primary resource for conducting these services with survivors of human trafficking is providing them with what we call a go bag. I wanted to, but just imagine a nylon drawstring bag that has a cup of noodles. It has some tampons. It has a toothbrush. These sometimes are life-saving items for folks that we are trying to serve. I know a lot of folks in this room are probably very passionate about the cause of human trafficking, and the reality is that we cannot meet the mental health needs, the housing needs, and the needs to help survivors find safety without meeting these most basic needs first. That's why at YWCA, we are committed to our mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Today, with this mission and the women, survivors, and families of Kansas in mind, we advocate at the federal, state, and local levels for practical solutions that meet the needs of women, girls, and marginalized communities. We know that women are the primary source of financial support for many families and bear significant caretaking responsibilities at home. In 2021, 28.9% of households with children in Shawnee County were single-parent households. Our Early Learning Center, our before and after school programs work to serve working families who often rely on safety net programs such as SNAP and TANF, as I mentioned. We believe that no one should have to choose between their livelihoods and their health, safety, or family. And because of the dual roles of many of these women and caregivers who are the primary breadwinners, many who are women of color, they're often forced to choose between their economic security and their health. This bill is one way that we can take care of that. So I urge you to pass House Bill 2111 and deliver that relief now. Thank you for this opportunity to share YWCA's support of this legislation.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next conferee, we'd like to welcome Lindsay Weiss, and she's appearing via WebEx.
Hi, thank you for having this hearing today. I am Lindsay Weiss. I am a proponent of this bill, and I was last year, and I'll continue to be, but I'm hoping that this passes because this is a very important piece of legislation. And I am the affiliate director for I Support the Girls Kansas City, and we are a nonprofit, and we focus on collecting and distributing basic need items. And some of those items are period products. And I believe that period products and diapers and food are obviously very medically necessary, and this would have a great impact on the greater good and affect every Kansan. And so in the last 5 years, we have collected and distributed 225,000 products, and we've partnered with 175 local schools, domestic violence shelters, and other organizations. And we are just one of a few really hardworking organizations that try to bring the gift of dignity to everyone to meet their basic needs, especially when it comes to period products. So eliminating the taxation on these items would put us in the right direction. And it would add to the list of reasons why I would be proud to be a Kansan. I have been here for 35 years. I'm a social worker and mom and very invested in this community and in this state. And I think Kansas should follow suit with many, many other states that are eliminating these taxes and be a part of making a greater impact that will affect every Kansan. So I want to thank you for having this hearing, and I am hopeful that it will be passed soon. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next conferee will be, and I believe this is a joint, Becca Houlihan and Izzy, and I apologize, I'll probably butcher this last name, but Zoshi, are you with us via WebEx?
Yes. Hi, I'm Becca Houlihan. My friend Izzy Jockey couldn't make it today, but I'm happy to speak for all of us. Period poverty is a quiet but active crisis occurring in our community. According to State of the Period 2021 survey, 1 in 4 teens have missed school due to lack of access to period products, while 1 in 4 women struggle to purchase products, forcing them to improvise or entirely miss work. Last year, my friend Izzy Jockey and I started Equity Period, a charitable organization with the goal to provide free products in the bathrooms at our school, Notre Dame de Sion High School. Having reached that goal, we now assist other schools and support girls who have trouble receiving the necessary products. As well, we've supported Free Hot Soup of Kansas City Welcome Alliance, and Giving the Basics. Over the past year, gifting more than 12,000 feminine products so far. However, we often shop in Missouri to ensure our finances make a bigger impact for those in need. To maximize our donations, we have to responsibly price shop. Still, we know that all we do is not enough. Last week, with the help of Kansas Appleseed, we met with Governor Laura Kelly to support her efforts to axe the taxes on feminine products, diapers, and food. These basic human necessities are increasing in price to the point it's cost prohibitive for many. We believe Kansas is better than this. Humanity should be better than this. Please support the women in your life with dignity and affordable care and nutrition. Thank you for having me.
Becca, thank you for your testimony. Our next conferee would be Michaela Miller, also via WebEx.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Michaela Miller, and I'm a Kansas citizen, as well as the founder and CEO of Kansas 501c3 nonprofit Strawberry Week Society. Our mission is focused on alleviating period poverty in our community by freely distributing menstrual products to local schools, healthcare centers, low-income communities, and public restrooms. I'm speaking in support of House Bill 2111. The taxation of period products is discriminatory because it disproportionately affects those who menstruate. Menstruation is an unavoidable monthly event that affects half the population. When someone is unable to afford or access period products, they must resort to unsafe management methods such as reused pads or rags. These methods lead to serious illness and infection. The experience of period poverty also contributes to an increase in anxiety and depression. Period poverty is a public health issue. Additionally, 1 in 5 students misses school due to a lack of access to period products. This consistent absence impacts education in Kansas. So period poverty is an education issue as well. By removing sales tax on essential health items such as period products and thus making them more affordable, Kansans will have improved mental and physical health as well as improved school attendance. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Paige Olson.
Hi, members of the House Committee on Taxation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 2111. I work for Kansas Appleseed, Center for Law and Justice. It's a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to the belief that Kansans working together can build a state full of thriving, inclusive, and just communities. I am the Southeast Kansas Thriving Advocate, so I do a lot of anti-hunger work, which this falls right into. So it can't be disputed that the Kansas Legislature understands the burden our regressive sales tax has on Kansas families, which is why we passed it last year. But we know with inflation rates, Kansans need help right now. So we know that Kansans work every day to make, or Kansas Appleseed works every day to make food assistance programs more accessible to those who are food insecure. So we know that in 2021, 200,300 Kansas participated in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is SNAP. And with SNAP, whenever you're using it, it is tax exempt. But SNAP is just that, it's supplemental. So with cutting the food sales tax and making it 0%, you get people that are supplementing their grocery bill and buying the things outside of what SNAP covers, that it just helps that. There's also families like mine, which are often overlooked, is families that receive just a little bit more or have a little bit more money and don't qualify for food assistance. My husband and I both have jobs. He's a substitute teacher. I obviously work for Kansas Appleseed. We have 3 elementary aged boys, and we struggle with our grocery bill every single year. We don't qualify for any sort of food assistant programs. So, our grocery bill has more than doubled, and that, could be partly because we have 3 growing boys, but not to the point that it's doubling. So we live paycheck to paycheck, and we know that 63% of U.S. consumers also live paycheck to paycheck. And this bill just helps families across the board. It doesn't discriminate. It helps everyone. And Kansas Appleseed supports this, not only because it would end the food sales tax this year, but it also addresses 2 other important groups of items that was discussed today. Diapers, which, again, as a mother, I know are very, very expensive, and my children haven't been in diapers for years, but I remember just how hard it was to try to feed my family and make sure that they had diapers. And then also feminine hygiene products, again, woman and with children. So it all becomes a big burden. And by axing the food sales tax now, we can help Kansas families now, especially like mine. So I urge you to vote in favor of this bill. And I am happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you for your testimony. The final conferee I have appearing before the committee is a proponent, John McCormick. Welcome to committee, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak in front of you today. I think I'd be remiss in not thanking you for what you did last year, taking the tax in a 3-year program to 0. The members need it, and the Kansas families need it. As you know, Kansas, salt of the earth, right? Salt of the earth people. Not only the citizens of Kansas, but the retailers of Kansas. I'm a former retailer, and I represent about 125 retail stores that sell food in the state of Kansas. We know what the bill is because you've already passed it. We have 2 more years, not counting this one, and we'll be at 0. So I think there's 2 goals here. 1, help the Kansans have a lower food bill now. And I just want to mention that if you watch television and they talk about inflation and they say that food's gone up 8-9%, not in my experience, maybe not even in yours. I'm thinking it's more like 15, okay? And that's coming from a former retailer. Secondly, I want to help the retailers in Kansas stay in business. We've lost about 100 stores since 2008. Most of them have been independent stores, and they're all in small towns. I've had calls to come here and talk about food deserts. I don't want to talk about food deserts. I want to talk about thriving independent retailers. Okay, the big stores too, that's fine. I want the retailers to thrive. The retailers that provided testimony. Well, let me go back to inflation. The USDA Economic Research Services are saying 10%. I mentioned it's probably 15. The KDLR is forecasting another 5 in 23 and another 4 in 24. When you look at $100 worth of groceries, you start compounding that number, and it starts to get expensive for Kansas families. back in the day, I brought 7 children into this world with my wife. I won't comment any more about that. The first child we brought in, we tried cloth diapers, and that didn't work. Okay, so I'm all in favor of taking care of diapers and feminine hygiene products as well. The grocers are pressured on the bordering states. When you talk about Travis Keir in Mankato, Washington, and Clay Center stores, he's a 5th generation retailer. They started in 1908. And, he's experiencing his residents going across the border to Nebraska to buy groceries. They're not just buying groceries, they're filling up their gas tank, they're going to the restaurant. If we do this, I think we're going to recoup some dollars. And I don't know how to survey that. I don't know how to project what those dollars are, but it would be real. He mentions that the state policy shouldn't be the reason that he's not competitive with the people across the border. Mike Flourish, son and daughter, taking it over. This is the 3rd generation. He's actually got a store in Fairbury, Nebraska, too. He's got 6 stores. He's got customers in Fairbury from Kansas. He talks to them, says if they change the tax, we come back and shop with you. That's kind of tough to take when you're a retailer. I was going to bring some coins, 3 quarters, 2 dimes, and 5 pennies, and hold up the penny and tell you that this is what these guys are fighting for, is a penny. If they make it, they got to give some to the government. Right? So it's a tough business. Pat White, they've got 7 stores. They started in 1953. They've been in business for 70 years. Medicine Lodge, Kingman, Lindsborg, Lyons, St. John's, and Phillipsburg up right across the border in Nebraska. He's mentioning that inflation is the worst he's ever seen in his lifetime as a grocer. He'd like to put aside the partisan politics and get on with it, right? Let's help Kansans. To recap, by reducing the food tax to 0 now, the Kansas dollars will stay in Kansas now. Those dollars will help the Kansas retailers stay in business, and you'll be helping the families that we heard about in the other testimony earlier today. Please spend as much time as you can to figure out over the next 2 years the 2 reductions. When we get to 0, find that money, and let's do it now. I thank you very much, and I appreciate your service representing the citizens of Kansas. Any questions? I'll be available.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our proponents section testimony as far as in person. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in favor of House Bill 2111? If not, we'll go ahead and open it up to questions. Representative Burkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is for John. So if you don't mind coming back up here. I guess I will say that we frequented White's and Keyman for many years, so very familiar with his stores. Just a general comment too, I think I've heard inflation mentioned a lot, and to me, I think that's more of a federal issue than state, but I know that as a state, we should do what it takes to try and help. My question for you is, if we look at Johnson County as an example, competing with Missouri businesses, if we proceed with this tax policy, how does that benefit other retailers such as hotels, restaurants, electronic stores? To me, it seems like we're benefiting one very small segment of the industry at the cost of several others. And if I'm coming over to do business, I'm looking at maybe non-groceries versus groceries. So just want to get your thoughts on that.
You'll need to speak into the microphone.
I'm not quite understanding the question.
So if our overall sales tax rate isn't competitive with Missouri and what we're doing today doesn't help that. So if I'm a consumer, I'm just going to stay in Missouri to purchase electronics, go out to eat because their sales tax is cheaper than Kansas. So how do we benefit Kansas businesses that don't just sell food? To me, this is very specific for kind of one industry trying to help that business, where I think our goal is to try and help the overall economy by benefiting all businesses.
Well, if I understand it, and again, the reverberation is a little tough here for me anyway. The states, the 30 plus states that have no tax on food, if you're going to buy an Apple computer or you're going to buy something else, we're talking about something that is subsistence, and so I don't know that it's a problem, and I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but if someone wants some earbuds, I don't care what the tax is, right? I'm concerned about the people eating food.
I understand that, and I'm good with that. So thank you.
If you wouldn't mind staying at the podium, I had a question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Kind of following up on Representative Bergkamp's question. In your experience, what does it take to influence consumer behavior? For instance, if the tax rate is 4% difference, is that going to impact? Are people still going to cross that state line to go to the cheaper area? Is it 2%? Does it need to be all the way to 0? What's your opinion on that?
There's stuff all over for people. And I don't know if I can answer that for the people that think that's enough to go over across. I think as a retailer, I want to have a level playing field. I don't want someone to have remember the penny? That's 1% on the dollar. So I don't want to have someone have a 4%, 2% advantage over me. And the consumer, I don't know. You'd have to do a survey. Depends on how far they have to drive.
Probably depends on how full their shopping cart needs to get.
Right.
Next question, Representative Stogstill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for Kathleen. I had a quick question. Do you know how much, or just an estimate of how much money Kansas have paid in food sales tax since July 1st of last year?
I do not have that in front of me, but I can get that for you.
That'd be great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just two things, because I do have a question for one of the conferees, but just a comment on your last question as someone who admittedly crosses state line quite a bit to save on groceries. I've got a 12-year-old son, so this could be understood. But it usually is, there really isn't honestly a number. And I think that Stogstill could speak to this as well, representing a border district. It's more of a general philosophy. Oh, well, it's cheaper over there. It's right over there. So, just kind of putting that out there as someone who lives and shops in a border district. But my question is for Lindsay Weiss, if she's still on the WebEx.
Yes.
Lindsay, are you still with us?
I am.
Go ahead.
So, well, hi, and thank you so much for providing your testimony. Very grateful to you and all that you do. So I know that one of our other conferees, I think Ms. Houlihan, also, she mentioned the fact that 1 in 4 girls miss school due to lack of access to these products due to their lack of affordability. Do you have any kind of a breakdown when it comes to more of the areas, especially in the Kansas City area that you serve? Just curious about this, because I know that 1 in 4 number is likely probably more of a national number, but was just curious if you knew anything locally or if you'd heard anything from the schools that your organization serves.
Yes. So good question. I started this work thinking I would just head North Kansas City and that would be the greatest need. And I was very mistaken in that. So I grew up in the Blue Valley School District, and anywhere, I think that 1 in 4 is a national number. I think it's still pretty close to home here too. But Olathe, Blue Valley, Shawnee Mission, I work with all of those schools often. And these items are needed everywhere. And one of the reasons is because they're still kind of considered luxury items, and there isn't really a budget for them as far as being on the same line item as like toilet paper or soap, which kind of makes sense. So as far as your question goes, I think no school has ever said we're good. Every single school I've talked to needs these products, and these students, deserve the dignity to just have what they need at school and to not have to worry about, missing school due to a lack of access.
Thank you. Thank you for being amazing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Clayton. And I don't know if you're aware, but I have a 14-year-old son, and I live a mile from Colorado, which has zero sales tax also. So I understand. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this would be for Representative Miller. So there was a lot of discussion last session, as you're well aware, on the food sales tax issue, but I don't recall at any point in time was it paired with the diapers and feminine hygiene products issue. So why, as this is being brought back this session, are these two things lumped together?
Politics, perhaps. I don't care if they're lumped together or if you just pass my bill by itself. I support the exemption of hygiene products from the sales tax because I think it makes for good hygiene, which makes for healthy Kansas, which saves us a lot of money in a lot of regards. I would ask that you study the testimony from last year of the people representing oral health. I know how important good oral health can be to one's overall health. And while that may be just a very small part of what I'm suggesting, it's a very large part of helping people stay healthy. And it's just one example of why I have the list of products that I do. They're there because they help people stay healthy. And they help people stay healthy because they can acquire all those products cheaper. But as far as pairing them together, I'm all for pairing them together.
Would you object to separating them out?
The governor might.
What about you?
I don't mind if you take them up one at a time. I support, as I said in my testimony, I support the exemption of all those items. Food, hygiene products. If you can't go along with the entire list of hygiene products, as I said last year, exempting feminine hygiene products is a good start. I think as far as exempting diapers, I don't think it should matter whether it's diapers for children, infants, or adults. It's still a product that adds to our cleanliness and our health. And I think that's good. I'm operating from the standpoint of good public policy, not politics. And I think all the items before you, including the ones that I suggest, go towards a policy that the people getting the tax relief are those people who need it the most, be it food or hygiene.
Well, just 7 or 8 short months ago, we had quite a debate on the food sales tax. And I know it wasn't what the governor wanted back then, but we came up with what I think was a compromise plan, and the governor signed it. So relative to food, I don't see any reason to revisit that now.
Well, she's a middle of the road person. I'm right down the turnpike. I say go fast and do it now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this might be for Ms. Weiss. So just some quick research. Maybe it looks like an individual spends $60 a month on products. So if we cut the sales tax, let's say they save $6 a month. If you mentioned that 1 in 4 don't have access today, if they're saving $6 a month, does that move it to 1 in 3, 1 in 2, or does it solve the problem completely? And I guess how do we just make sure everybody has access to this? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. I don't think it solves the problem immediately, but I think it definitely sets the standard that these are basic need items. They're medically necessary, and they will make a financial difference in the lifetime of a person that menstruates. But as far as, myself saving $6 a month, it's helpful. Any of this is helpful. I feel like, we kind of have to fight for a lot to kind of move it a little bit. So that's kind of what we're doing here. And I hope, making this change would be a step in the right direction just to set the standard for these products. And so as far as keeping kids in school, we need to have schools and organizations have a budget line item with including period products. So then it just becomes, the norm to have them available in bathrooms. And I think that coupled together is part of the solution.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe that's kind of my point too, is maybe there's a different way to tackle this problem than through the sales tax. So, but thank you for that information though.
I think it definitely is a good start though. I think that's part of the whole thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Committee, any further questions? Representative Stockstill.
I think it's more of a comment, answer maybe Representative Sanders' question. Last year when we had this discussion, I spoke at the well and I said, we'd had the opportunity to hit a home run, and we didn't do that. We should have gotten rid of the sales tax on food back then, and that would have been a home run for Kansas citizens. But the choice the governor was looking at was a single or an out. And she signed the single because the single's better than an out. But right now we're back up at the plate. So we have the opportunity to add to what we missed last year. And I think maybe that was her choice at that point.
Mr. Chairman.
Just a second, Representative Sanders. I have Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't care who can answer this, whether it's Representative Miller or whoever testified, but I'd just like to know, we heard the $60, but I know it's more than that. Does anybody have kind of a rough estimate per month for your food and everything to cover this bill? Just an average, what we're saving people a month by passing this?
I don't. It's more meaningful for those people the lower their income is as a percentage of their income. It's only, again, compared to the entire fiscal note, what I'm asking for is 14 million. You add the other hygiene products, we're talking 21 million. That's a small portion of the total, but it's $21 million of relief for everyday Kansans, and every little bit helps.
You're correct.
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to remind Representative Stogsdill that if the governor had hit a single back in 2019, she would have driven in that run January 1st of this year.
Okay. Committee, we're not debating the bill right now. We're just asking questions of the conferees. I appreciate the spirit of the dialogue, though. Are there any further questions for the proponents of the bill? If not, Representative Miller, I have a question for you. We have heard today eliminate, exempt, get rid of. This bill does not do that completely for the food sales tax. It takes the state rate to zero. I'm not sure what the differing local rates are across the state, but would you be in favor of something that actually eliminated, got rid of, and exempted sales tax on food?
I'd leave that to local option. I served 27 years as a local official, and I believe in local options. I know what eliminating that would do to some local governments as it relates to the transfer onto the property tax. If local units of government had all the options of revenue that we do as a state, maybe not so much, but their options are limited. They should be the ones that decide whether they want to assess taxes on their consumers or their property owners. But I would leave that to local control.
Okay. Committee, are there any further questions? Seeing none, I list no neutral or opponent testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to appear on behalf of House Bill 2111? Seeing none, we will close the hearing. We have 1 minute left, technically. I'd like to return to the order of business, request for bill introductions, and recognize Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce RS 1043. It is an act relating to sales and compensating use tax, providing for a sales tax exemption for area agencies on aging.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any questions?
Thank you.
Any objection? Seeing none, the request is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any announcements or anything for the good of the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.